Hello and good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? Hopefully that I'm coming on tonight, and most of you are sitting upright and not laying back on your Thanksgiving. But welcome everybody to another episode of He Said. A look at the world from a seasoned Black man's perspective. I'm Alvin King, and I am so glad that you guys are joining us tonight. Thank you for being here on this post Thanksgiving, and also it's Black Friday. So I've been looking at the news. I don't necessarily participate in all the Black Friday running out and doing all that shopping kind of thing. So for those of you who have been doing that, hopefully it's been fun and you have been getting some of the sales that you've been hoping or anticipating that you guys are going to get. Um, Hopefully everybody had a great Thanksgiving. I know I did. I spent it with my family, and it was the most beautiful day. But I also have something happened. I have it was a revelation, I guess you could call it. I have been eating turkey all my life, baked turkey, but yesterday I had fried turkey. And I'm telling you, as far as I'm concerned, baked turkey can be rebuked now, because if the fried turkey that I have moving forward, that my cousin got one of her friends to prepare for our dinner yesterday, it was absolutely fantastic. So I have no desire once a year to sit at a table and eat fried food, and it can be fried turkey. It was absolutely amazing. So for all you fried turkey lovers, Alvin is team fried turkey. So great. It was just excellent. But our show tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is a great show. We are honoring World AIDS Day 2021. It is on December the 1st, and the theme this year is inequalities and AIDS. Inequalities and AIDS. Correct. And it is so fitting for where we are in this world right now, and we are so glad to be doing this show. And joining us tonight from Whitman-Walker Health, we have someone who's going to be here talking to you and sharing with us in our theme yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I cannot wait to introduce you to her, because Whitman-Walker Health has played a significant role in the fight against eradicating HIV and AIDS, and they have been at the front lines for 40 years doing this. So we are glad to have them here today, and I'm telling you, we got a show for you. But before we start the show, I just wanted to tell you guys something about HIV and AIDS. HIV is a virus that compromises the immune system. There's currently no cure for it, but there are treatments available to reduce its effects on people's lives. Scientific advances, though, such as the development of antiretroviral drugs, have enabled people with access to treatment to live long and healthy lives with HIV. But it was 40 years ago, on June 5th, 1981, that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported on the first 5 cases of what we now know to have become AIDS. According to the World Health Organization, today in 2020, there are an estimated 38 million people living with HIV. 680 people have died from HIV in 2020, which is significantly low, I'm going to say 30 years ago. And they've died from related causes. 1,500,000 people were infected with HIV in 2020, and 73% of adults are now living with HIV and receiving lifelong antiretroviral therapy, also known as ART. But at that time, many of us couldn't have imagined that AIDS would have still been with us today, and that it would have taken more than 32 million lives globally. So on our show tonight, he said, we will honor the memory of those men, women, children of whom were our friends, our mentors, significant others, brothers, sisters, mothers, and more than 38 million people worldwide that have died from AIDS. And that's including 1.2 million here in the United States who are now living with HIV. I have a disclaimer, though, before we start the show. We will be using some language that is of an adult nature to some, and may offend some of our viewers who are watching the show. But in order to tell our story, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, we're going to take that route. So I just wanted to let you guys know. So let's get this show started. And I can't do it without my co-host. So let me bring in tonight Mr. Vash Bodhi and our contributing correspondent joining us for the first time, Mr. Nigel Ashford. Come on in here. How you guys doing?
Doing all right. Hey, Nigel, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Welcome, Nigel. Nigel, tonight I was actually going to put on a denim shirt. And I said, you know what, I'm feeling some knit. And I honestly was going to put on a denim shirt tonight. And I just said, no, I'm not going to do that. So you look good, my brother. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. We could have been twinning.
Oh, okay. Well, there's time for that. Hopefully you will come back. And for those who are watching, Saladin is out today celebrating Thanksgiving with his family. So we are so happy to have Nigel with us here tonight. So hopefully you guys had a great Thanksgiving.
Yes, yeah. I had 3 plates yesterday.
Now, Nigel, I know you live in Atlanta. Are you in Atlanta now? Or are you in Alabama? Or where are you right now?
So today I'm in Alabama, but we were with my family in Augusta Wednesday and Thursday. Then we came back 4 a.m. this morning today. Then I'm spending some more quality time with other family members here in Birmingham, Alabama. So it's been a whole boom. But I'm used to traveling, but I've really enjoyed just being with my family, especially compared to last year in 2020 when we had COVID, and spending it alone and just doing the normal phone calls and saying, hey, how are you doing? So it's been a great change and a switch around, and I'm happy to be jumping around from different cities and states, being able to see the people that I love.
I know that's right. Just absolutely blessed. So, and Vash, family's good. Before I move on, I'm going to make sure, because always checking with you and make sure the family's good, up in Philly, and everybody's doing well with you.
Things are all good. Yesterday was really lovely. I went with my aunt to a good friend of hers. The food was delicious. People were lovely. We had a great time. Lots of laughs. Delicious food. Just absolutely delicious. It was a great day. Great to be out.
Well, I don't know if it was just me, but in my household, the question that kept coming up with everybody, whether they got there on time or came late, was how did you feel about the verdict? And that was like the top of the that was the main question. And so, I had my answers, but for those who are watching, the verdict that I'm talking about are the 3 defendants that were guilty for killing Ahmaud Arbery. Yeah. And their trial was this week. And these 3 people whose name I won't mention, you all can read it. They were found guilty. And and one of them wasn't, he wasn't guilty on a couple of counts, but all of them have been found guilty. And one of the things for me, when people asked me that question, was how you felt about it. And I was like, well, I'm just tired of looking at the TV when we're up against one of these cases where we know should have gone one way anyway, because the facts were there, and you're sitting there ready to have an asthma attack. I am tired of being in that position. So yeah, I was glad that it happened, but I'm just getting a little sick and tired of just being in that position.
Yeah. Well, when the verdict was read, I was with my 94-year-old aunt, and it was very interesting to have her perspective, because she was just saying that she knows that they should be found guilty, but she has seen enough of these types of cases in her life where people walked free. So it was really interesting and very, very cool to be able to be there with her and have this happen and get her response. It was really great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Vash and Alvin, I think for me, it was kind of like, I don't know, like an early Christmas present. I think it symbolized hope, because we showed for once our justice system worked. You saw that racism is still alive, and how the defense lawyers were still trying to discredit this dead man who was jogging in his neighborhood, talking about the discoloring of his toenails and the length of his toenails, and saying that he looked some dirty or this. And this man was jogging in his neighborhood, and they were still trying to discredit him. And the judge caught that. And for it to be in the town and the city that it was, with a predominantly white jury, and they got rid of all but one African American jurors, and for them to still say, this is not right. You guys are discrediting a dead man who was jogging. And they saw right through that defense, and the judge saw right through that defense. And I just thought, wow, there is hope for tomorrow, for a city that that's been known to not been so pro African Americans during trials. That was such a turnaround. And that's why I say it just really gave me, and I think my generation, some type of hope.
Yeah, and you're right. The defense did do themselves some disservice by how they came across. And it even started earlier when they said that when Al Sharpton was in the courtroom, and they said that they didn't want any Black ministers to be in the courtroom. I mean, to feel like a defense attorney and you feel like you can say that and that it's okay, it just shows you where we are in this world. So, I'm gonna say, yeah, Nigel, I see what you're saying, man. Yeah, it felt like an early Christmas present, but I'm just tired of feeling like I'm, getting ready to have an asthma attack to see, what's in that box. You know what I'm saying? So, it happened, and I am so happy that it did. Justice prevailed in this case. Yeah. So, applause. Okay. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, again, we are here tonight. Thank you, guys. We are here to honor World AIDS Day 2021, and we are doing it with a very special guest. Her name is Jewel Addy. She's a Washingtonian, but by way of Silver Spring, South Orange, New Jersey, and Liberia, West Africa. Jewel is the co-founder of Red Dot Campaign, Inc., a former nonprofit and supported menstrual health access and awareness through art, comedy, and storytelling. Jewel works as the Director of Communications at the Whitman-Walker Health, having worked in the organization in various capacities since 2015. But during her time at Whitman-Walker, she has led projects including the 2017 and 2019 oral history collections through a partnership with the DC Oral History Collaborative, and produced a 2018 documentary in partnership with DC TV called Fearless at 40, the story of Whitman-Walker. But in 2020, Jewel led a public projects grant through the DC Oral History Collaborative to showcase Whitman-Walker's oral history and archive through a collaborative art exhibition at Whitman-Walker's formal cultural center, The Corner at Whitman-Walker. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome the Director of Communications at Whitman-Walker Health, Miss Jewel Addy.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Alvin.
Hey,
hi, Nigel.
Jewel.
Hi, Vosh. So nice to be here. Thank you all for having me.
Thanks you for being here. Wow. Jewel and I have been e-meeting for like a week. And so, when we all both realized, oh, it's Thanksgiving week, that was really a moment. And so I will remember that, Jewel, for time to come. But Jewel, can you take about 60 to 90 seconds to tell our viewers about your role as the Director of Communications at Whitman-Walker?
Can do. Hi, everyone. My name is Jewel. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I've worked at Whitman-Walker Health for about 6.5 years in various roles and capacities, but most recently as the Director of Communications. I work on the external affairs team, and I think together we work to really kind of share the brand Whitman-Walker with community, make sure that people know that we're a resource here in the DMV area, and also just really work to increase people's access to care. We're all about reducing barriers to care and just making sure that we take care of the whole person. So we offer primary medical care, dental health, behavioral health and substance use treatment services. We operate 2 pharmacies and 2 health centers in the city. We do research studies. We've studied nearly every HIV treatment on the market and also nearly every hepatitis C treatment on the market. So we just really do a lot to help keep the community healthy, thriving, and help work toward preventative care.
Right on.
Thank you.
Now, Joe, you're going to be here with us throughout, so you're going to be woven into the conversation. But I just want to start off getting an understanding from Alvin. What was life like before HIV and AIDS?
Wow, Vash. Well, for our viewers, I have lived through the beginning of HIV and AIDS, and Vash, I'm going to condense my response to you.
Okay.
I'm going to first say the 70s, 80s, and 90s were, in terms of fun and people living their lives, and it felt like it was just so liberated. It was just a fun time. It was a huge moment for the LGBTQI community in terms of, going to dance spots. And so places like the Clubhouse here in DC, the Paradise Garage in New York, the Catacombs in Philadelphia, the Catch One in LA, Studio 54, I was all up in all of them. And I was doing flips and cartwheels every weekend. It was just a moment where life seemed really good. And most importantly, it was a time where there was a lot of relationships going on. People were in relationships. Of course, there wasn't any type of marriage equality. So people were in relationships that, lasted 20 years before, and a lot of them before, AIDS hit. But it was fun. It was just a fun time. And then all of a sudden, the light started flickering.
Mm-hmm.
And it just so that's what life was before HIV and AIDS. And I'm not speaking for the masses. I'm speaking for myself personally. It was just fun to be a Black gay man.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't trade it for the world.
And then so it was freedom and fun and frivolity. And then what happened once the CDC recognized HIV and AIDS?
Wow. Well, by the time the CDC recognized it in 81, I think I've been keeping a journal for over 40 years, and I started keeping a very tight one when HIV and AIDS hit, because my partner 15 years died of AIDS. And so I started recording everything that I could during that time. But it was like in 1978 or 79, that's when the first cases started, but we didn't know what it was. And people were getting pneumonia, pneumocystis as they called it, and people were just dying. People would get a cold and it would be a form of pneumonia, and they were talking about you could get it from birds or pigeons, and it was just the most ridiculous. I'm sorry, I don't want to say ridiculous. It was scary. It was scary because you didn't know if it was going to come into your life, and when it did, how long you had to live. And so for me, it entered my life. My partner when my partner got HIV. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't HIV at that time. My partner at that time, you just got full-blown AIDS, because HIV had lived in it. It can live in the body for a number of years without you knowing it. So no one knew about HIV. So it was, AIDS. And then there were the drugs. AZT was very harmful to a lot of people. You couldn't take it. And so that was also, in my opinion, speeding up the process for people to die, because they couldn't take it. But it was the only drug that was out there. And then there was one more drug that I want to talk about called Bactrim that I just absolutely, I don't know where they got it from, but it was like gasoline in a pill. And all of my friends and people that I knew who got AIDS and their doctors put them on Bactrim, they just died. they just died. And if I felt so bad for people's families, because their families were putting their kids out in the street if they knew they were gay, because they just felt like they weren't bringing AIDS into the house because people didn't know about it. So people were losing their homes. I mean, people were out on the street and were being turned away. It was awful. It was a bad time, but there was also a lot of love and with people in our own community. And one last thing, I'm going to close on this, just to aid when AIDS hit. When people die, especially in relationships, they didn't know anything about having a will. And at 29 years old, I learned about having a will. And that was the only thing that kept my partner's family from coming in and taking everything away from me without me having any type of recourse. And I know a lot of people didn't have that. We had healthcare. He had the best treatment in the world, but when he passed away, that was also something that I know a lot of people experienced. If they died and they were in relationships, their family came in and moved everything out, and there was nothing that they could do about it. So wow. It was really a crazy time. And I can go on the way funerals treated people with AIDS, the way church treated people with AIDS. But nobody knew what was going on. So It was just a scary time.
Okay.
Scary time. So thank you for asking me that. Let me share that.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing, because I can tell that it still affects you.
It does. It does. It does, because a lot of people have died and didn't have to.
Yeah.
They just didn't have to. But considering where we were, it was inevitable. Mm-hmm. And so for those people who have lived 40 years and are living life now, and because they are asymptomatic and whatever, if they did have the virus in them, their immune system was strong enough to sustain it, and they are able to live now. God bless you. God bless you. There is a God, and we'll talk more about the different treatments and stuff like that later on. Yeah.
Right on.
Mm-hmm. Alvin, I just have a quick question. First of all, I just commend you for going through what you went through and just being a survivor, and for your strength. I commend you. What is it like for the partner? What is it like when the partner is there seeing their significant other or their partner going through AIDS, dying? What is going through your mind when you're trying to see what all can I do to help them, to save them, or to make them comfortable?
Nigel, I'm going to say that is a good question that I was not prepared to answer, but and so it's a very good question. But for me personally, because my partner and I were so public, my partner was a fashion designer and a very well-known fashion designer. And so when he was impacted by AIDS, watching him go through his he went through shame, denial, guilt, all of that. He even resented me because I didn't have what he had. And so the relationship wasn't a strain, but I knew that what is that term? Misery loves company. And I just know that in a very selfish way, as much as he didn't want me to have it, he was going through it and he was dying. And I just had to become an adult and very wise, very quick, like I said. And I have a group of people who are still with me today that I am Alvin King because of them. They're older than I was. And they told me about getting a will. They told me how I need to communicate at 29 years old with my partner who was 17 years old, 12 years older than me. I had to become a person who had to learn how to communicate. So when it came time for him to pass away, and I had to make that decision, it was the toughest decision in my life to have to make. And I don't wish that on anybody, but I am a stronger person because of it.
Yeah, well, we have George Pringle who's in, and George says that we are stronger, better, and wiser. Lamont has said, phenomenal life. Thanks for sharing. So that to you. And Alma, hey, Alma. Alma has said, thank you for sharing, Alvin. Some still aren't ready to tell their stories. So your courage and honesty and forthrightness is really, really appreciated. It's really powerful.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
This is for, I guess, you and for Jewel. How was AIDS treated when it first came out? What medications and things were used, and how were those received?
Well, like I said, AZT was like the drug. AZT was the drug before cocktails. And like I said, Bactrim, for which I wish I had a circle with a line drawn through it. But AZT was the drug. And I know my partner had 5 blood transfusions during that time because the doctors didn't know what to do. And so he had 5 transfusions. They thought that they could remove his blood and replace it with other blood. Right. But in my opinion, I think that some of the blood might have been tainted.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Alvin touched on AZT. I think what we've learned is that people are over prescribing AZT early on. Like the dose was just too high. And that's when we saw people, dying so much faster. And there wasn't any available HIV treatment that actually worked and was effective until 1996. So this is, from 81 to 96, you just have people whose automatic outcome, if they do test positive for HIV, is dying from age-related complications. So there wasn't any treatment to start. It took years of advocating for public funding to support HIV treatment. And then it took, years of research to find those treatments in 96. But Whitman-Walker Health was fortunate to start researching HIV treatments back in 1987. And that was a result of the funds that we raised at our first ever AIDS Walk Washington. And now we call it the Walk in 5K to End HIV. But it's an event that we have been doing every year since 1987 to help raise funds for HIV treatment research and care programs.
Wow. So you guys started really actually very early, Whitman-Walker, in the whole fight with AIDS.
Well, yeah, Whitman-Walker was it was like a clinic that, Jewel, correct me, it wasn't geared toward HIV. They were really a clinic to help, let's say, they were there for people who had STDs, if you will. And so yes. it wasn't for HIV and AIDS in the beginning. And they kind of moved to that as HIV and AIDS entered the world.
Correct. So for us, we started off as a gay men's VD clinic in 1973. We had a few programs around kind of like an Alcoholics Anonymous, substance use treatment, and of course, VD or STD testing. And we want to be a safe space for the gay and the lesbian communities to come and just have an outlet, whether it was for substance use treatment or, folks who were struggling with not being out, and for folks who needed to access sexual health services where they weren't being, like back in the day, back at that time, the American Psychological Association's recommendation for anyone who was LGBTQ was that they should go and, be entered into like a psych ward or get treatment or support in that way to help them not be queer. And so we want to provide a safe space for folks to get, medical care and get access to VD and STD treatment and testing. And so we were just mildly prepared for the HIV epidemic to come in the early 1980s.
Right on.
And you guys, I do see that we have a question by AK Moore, but I think AK Moore's question will allow us to move from yesterday to our subject matter today. So if you guys don't mind, can we read AK's question?
Absolutely, go for it.
AK Moore says, comparing the early HIV epidemic to the current COVID pandemic, how was the gay community's response regarding prevention? I find a lot of us today in regards to COVID are in denial and resistant to proactive preventive measures like masks and vaccine. Very good question, AK. I have a response to that, but if anybody wants to go first, you can go ahead. Oh, it was for me.
So you can go first and we'll follow along.
You can follow up. Well, first of all, AK, let me say again, thank you for your question. But when people talk about HIV and AIDS and COVID in the same conversation, I have to I have to separate it. I have to, because there is no comparison, because COVID, it's in the air. and it's in the air. How a person gets HIV and AIDS, it has to be either through what do you call it, saliva or blood, some type of what do you call it,
bodily fluid.
Bodily fluid. So I don't typically talk about them in the same way. But I'm gonna try to answer your question real quick. Compared to the early HIV epidemic to the current COVID pandemic, how was the gay community's response regarding prevention? We were on it. Okay, now there were some, I'm sure there were some, and I'm not judging, that felt like party over here. Let's keep on going to the bathhouses. Let's keep on, having unprotected sex because it can't happen to me. And so it was a lot of that going on. But for those in the community that were shocked with it, it was like, oh my God, I haven't been using a condom before, but I'm gonna start using it now. But at that point, it was kind of, it was already out there and people were infected, but people were on top of it. They weren't walking around saying, I'm not going to put on the people in my circle weren't walking around saying that they were not going to put on a condom because we talked about it. There were some, but again, I'm going to leave it right there before I go down that road. Thank you, AK.
Great question. I think in terms of response for COVID and HIV, we saw a lot of activism, both back then and now, and young people and older folks and folks who experienced the HIV epidemic and just knew kind of the slow responses that we might see in some areas. Like, by April 2020, our policy team at Whitman-Walker was advocating for inclusion of sexual orientation and gender identity data as we navigate this pandemic, because we knew that in order to get an accurate picture of who this COVID-19 was going to impact and who it was impacting, we needed to know everything about that person's health history. So that includes, how they identify sexual orientation wise, how they identify gender identity wise, and what kind of sex they're having. So I think things like that were very nearsome, but navigating this pandemic, there's been a lot of parallels in terms of, you hear one thing from the higher ups or the CDC or whoever the office is, and you kind of just have to keep, paying attention and listening for the updates as they come, because we're going to, get information and be privy to it as they have the science and research to back it up. So I think that there's parallels to be seen in that way. But of course, we saw the folks who, were denying that COVID existed or denied that HIV existed. Back in that day, it was the government denying that it existed because of who it was impacting. But with COVID, people had to act more quickly and had to respond more quickly because it was impacting everybody. Right. And we knew that with time, it would impact, groups that are already underrepresented or underserved or marginalized more severely.
I also want to give a plug to what Jewel just said. There were people on the front lines. There was a lot of activism, like you said. I was a part of a group called ACT UP. And, I was in the streets of New York with my hot pants on and, marching down the street. And Vosh tried to get me to show a picture from that. I tried to find it, but my mental state wouldn't let me find that picture. Yeah. But yeah, I was a part of ACT UP. And also there were small, here in DC, I want to give a plug to an organization called Us Helping Us, People into Living. They were very, very, very much on the front lines, especially for African Americans, and making sure that their activism was loud, proud, and upfront. So I want to say that. Mm-hmm.
Jewel, I have a quick question for you. First of all, I just love your accolades. I was just bowing down as Alvin was just reading everything. I was, oh my God. But when COVID started, people was wondering, like, where did it originate from? Like, how did they get sick? How did people get sick? And they was talking about how it came from the bats. Like, people were selling the bats and people were eating it and it passed the infection. So just going off of that with HIV, they talked about how HIV came from chimpanzees in the Dominican Republic, Congo, and how hunters hunted these chimpanzees, ate them, and then the virus mutated, giving them HIV-1, and then the huge sex trade happened, spreading the disease. But people don't talk about that. They connect it to gay men having sex, but not, hey, it came from this animal, it came from sex trade, heterosexual sex trade, and people were spreading it in that way. Why do people forget about the research, the past, and why wasn't this made aware?
I think it really boils down to there still being so much stigma around HIV as a disease. Folks aren't because depending on who they are and how impacted they are by it, or how much HIV is intertwined into their personal life, they might not know anything about HIV other than like the horror stories of the AIDS epidemic and just knowing it still AIDS today versus HIV, a chronic disease that's manageable in comparison to AIDS with no treatment options in the 80s and 90s and it being a death sentence. So I think it really does come from that stigma around HIV still exists today. And that, if you don't know what HIV in 2021 looks like, you probably don't know what the start of it looks like. And people are just kind of stuck in their ways and need exposure to more conversations like this.
So let me ask everybody a question. How do you explain the same antiretroviral drugs that were used to treat the early stages of COVID, which have now led to a vaccine for COVID, 3 to be exact, are not being used for vaccine for HIV/AIDS? How do you explain that?
Well, I think years of research have led to advancements in the kind of vaccines and trials that we see being done. They were studying HIV vaccines right before COVID-19 hit, and folks are getting back to studying that now that we do have all of these vaccines available. But I think that we're grateful that all of these years of HIV research was able to get us to a place where we could have these COVID-19 vaccines so quickly because of the large public health threat that COVID has presented to us. But I'm with you. I hope that we do find an HIV vaccine and treatment and cure, or sorry, not treatment, but more treatment options and cure options and preventative options sooner than later. But I think it did hurt a lot of the HIV community or people who have been impacted by HIV all these years that we were able to just speed up and get these COVID-19 vaccines when some folks have been waiting for decades.
Right.
How close do you think we are to finding a vaccine or full-on preventative measures for HIV and AIDS?
As a non-clinical researcher myself, yes. I think it's too soon for me to give a timeline on that, but sure. I can say that people are in the lab working on this. There's the HIV or the HVTN, the HIV Clinical Trials Network. It's a global network of research sites that study HIV treatment and prevention options. I think they did have a recent report over the summertime that wasn't as promising as folks hoped for. But this community of folks continues to research HIV, and Whitman-Walker has actually been part of the AIDS clinical trial group research cohort, since its inception or very, very early on. Sorry, I think I missed your other question. Can you share that one again?
No, it was about that, but I do want to switch because you did bring up the stigma. There is still a stigma about HIV and AIDS. And on one hand, we have drugs that will reduce the virus in your blood to make it so that it is undetectable and people really can't transmit the disease. And then we have PrEP, which helps prevent people from getting the disease. So how should kids today look at AIDS and HIV? And is the stigma, does it have a place, or should we be away from that?
Great question. I think that, well, first, I always like to kind of give the map of HIV today, right? So everyone's got to get tested for HIV. You're not going to know what path for HIV prevention or HIV treatment you should take unless you get your HIV test. Right. So it's important to get tested every 3 to 6 months for HIV and STIs, because having an STI puts you at greater risk for getting HIV. So once you get your test, if it's negative, you can explore preventative options like PrEP or PEP. PrEP is kind of like the birth control of HIV, but instead of preventing pregnancy, it prevents HIV that's transmitted through sex. It's about 99% effective at preventing HIV that's transmitted through sex. And then it's also about 74%, I believe, effective at preventing HIV that's transmitted through that's transmitted through injection drug use. So those are really great tools. They're simply a pill a day, and there's research being done to have just a shot every couple of months. So instead of having to be so adherent and taking medication every day, or if you, just don't like taking pills or have bad experiences with pills, that this is an option for you. And it's pretty cool when you think about how in the beginning of the epidemic for HIV, folks were taking these cocktails, they're taking so many pills, and then you've got this one pill a day that's possibly going to be a shot soon and available to folks that you can take for prevention. So that's your pre-exposure prophylaxis. There's also PEP or PEP. This is what you would take kind of like the plan B for pregnancy, but instead of preventing pregnancy, it prevents HIV transmission. So if you think you had an exposure to HIV, you've got to seek it out within 72 hours. You can get it at your medical provider or any emergency room. They'll have it for you. And you just take it for 28 days, and then it helps prevent your chance of becoming HIV positive. So those are kind of your two lanes. If you get tested and you test negative for HIV, if you test positive for HIV, then you just start HIV treatment. And there's options that are just a single pill a day. Again, really cool when you think about where we were with the AIDS cocktails and AZT treatments, and honestly, folks trying out whatever herbal substances that they could find because there weren't treatment options. So people were researching and finding what they could find and kind of trying to treat their body on their own because they couldn't rely on public health and the government at the time. So all that said, treatment is the best thing, and U equals U is a thing. So if you take your treatment as prescribed by your provider, you can achieve an undetectable viral load of HIV in your body and not be able to transmit it to another person through sex.
Well, but before we close on, I'm sorry. Was somebody going to say something? Go ahead.
Yes, I was going to say, Jewel, coming from a generation, age 28, one thing I'm seeing with a lot of young people they're having a lot of unprotected sex. And that's due to them now having Descovy, PrEP, and other preventive measures to getting HIV. And they're feeling, okay, since I won't have this lifelong disease, you can treat an STI or STD, and now I'm able to take that chance. Have you seen an increase of STIs and STDs since the creations of PrEP, Descovy, and other preventive measures?
I think that what we're seeing, I think that what we're seeing in lots of places is that HIV and STIs are increasing amongst young people. I think there's questions and research being done to kind of figure out why this group is experiencing this uptick. But I think a lot of it comes from, not the best safer sex education in school systems. We don't have like a blanket sex ed program or curriculum that we share with the whole 50 states of the US. So that's one thing to blame. I think it's a lot also to do with heterosexual based safer sex curriculum. It's not inclusive of all the types of sex that kids are having and engaging in or young people are having and engaging in. And then it's also probably a bit of people not having experienced or being close enough to the HIV epidemic to know how severe and scary it was. And because it's not in that same space that it was during the height of the 80s and 90s, folks just don't know how crazy it is where we are today with HIV treatment being an option.
Mm-hmm. And because of these treatment options, I mean, isn't that sort of why people are just sort of regarding it as just this thing that's treatable? I mean, wasn't that the goal at the beginning, to get to a place where you could just treat it? Aren't we sort of there? Isn't that why these kids are not taking it so seriously?
I mean, to not speak for all of the kids, I'm
the kids is such a thing to say.
I'm not sure.
I was like, don't you do it.
Yes, I can't speak for all of the kids everywhere, but I think that's definitely to take into consideration. I also see that AK Moore posted in the chat that there's a glorification of raw porn that plays a part in this too, and I think that's true. Yeah. There's so many outside factors. It's who talked to you about sex when you were a kid and who didn't talk to you about sex, and what kind of sex they talked to you about, and how much they prepared you for growing up, really. Like, did your parents talk to you about getting your period and using condoms and lube and what that looks like for each person's individual upbringing? So all of those things said, I think it's important that we, continue to provide safe spaces for young people to learn about actual helpful sex education information. So we do have 2 programs through our social media at Whitman-Walker and at RealTalkDC_, where you can tune in live weekly for different Instagram lives as we talk through HIV prevention and STIs. We talk about COVID-19. We go through like vaccines and kind of just take you through the gamut of sexual health and prevention. And I think also, Vash, you mentioned, wasn't treatment the goal? I think treatment at the time was the goal, but prevention is always the super creme de la creme of goals when it comes to public health and HIV and any public health measure. That's why people are pushing COVID-19 vaccines so hard, because it's better that you don't get COVID-19, period, but it's better that if you were to get it, that you have this vaccine in your system to protect you.
Right on.
So look, okay, because time is against us, so I need our viewers to learn as much as they possibly can about Whitman-Walker Health and what you are doing right now. So I want to move into tomorrow, because I know that you are doing some amazing things, and so I want to go ahead and move into that. I know I have a question. Does any one of you want to go ahead and start before I go in, because I have a pretty long question for Jewel.
I do. Like, Jewel, what's your favorite success story from being at Whitman-Walker Health?
I think two come to mind currently. One, of course, is the whole 40 Stories project that was mentioned in my bio. So we knew that our 40th anniversary was coming up in 2018. We wanted to celebrate it, but we didn't quite know how we were going to do it just yet. And we got introduced to this oral history collaborative grant through the DC Oral History Collaborative, where we could, talk to folks like Alvin, who experienced the epidemic and lived through it, and were in the DC area, and could speak to just the intersections of HIV, DC, and Whitman-Walker Health. And so through that collection, we got to hear people's life stories from birth to present day, and just hear about what navigating HIV in DC was like for them. And so, there was folks who shared stories of what it was like to learn about HIV for the first time, like how were they personally introduced to what HIV was. Some folks, for them, they first learned it as GRID, or I think it's gay-related immunodeficiency disease. Some folks mentioned having a common partner, and that partner, had been still dating people, and then ends up in the hospital. And once he learned of his diagnosis, he committed suicide. And just, horror stories, but also stories of hope and people learning the difference between HIV and AIDS, and learning that they weren't going to die, and learning that there were people out there that were going to advocate for them. Alvin spoke about how you had to work through your will and estate for your partner. One of our earliest programs is from 1986. It's our legal services program. And that came about because we were seeing a lot of our clients whose parents and families had abandoned them during their life because they were gay or because they had HIV or AIDS, and trying to swoop in at the last second and kind of take whatever they could get their hands on estate-wise. And so our legal team was founded in 86 to help people plan their the last wills and testaments. You also mentioned funerals. We helped a lot of people, have funerals because of that time, because people didn't know how it was transmitted, because people were scared because of the stigma. Folks would go and pass away and not have a proper home to have their funeral in, or funeral homes were not accepting them. So we even saw that during the COVID-19 pandemic, but we were just at capacity where funeral homes couldn't accept people. So there's been lots of parallels between these two epidemics, but those are some of the ways in which, we've been fighting from the beginning.
So, Jewel, let me ask, I know the Whitman-Walker Health, you guys are opening a new building in DC. And can you tell us something, or tell us about the new building? And also, I also want to make sure that we get the links up here where people can contact you and make sure that they stay in touch, or get connected with Whitman-Walker Health and all the things that you're doing.
Yes, so we're actually opening up our largest footprint here in DC. It's going to be a 118,000 square foot health center at the campus of St. Elizabeth's East. It'll be just steps away from the Congress Heights Metro. We'll be moving our Max Robinson Center healthcare operations from MLK in Chicago and Anacostia, Washington, D.C. over to Congress Heights, Washington, D.C. And we're going to be opening up that building in 2023. And we'll be offering our same services. We'll be doing medical, dental, research, behavioral health, and substance use services. We'll have a pharmacy. Our community health team will be out and doing free testing in the community. But we're really excited to expand our capacity for patients from 5,000 patients at our current Max Robinson Center to 15,000 patients.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
That's amazing.
Okay. Well, I guess since we're here at that point, Can you tell us how Whitman-Walker Health is funded and what percentages are allocated to the services that you provide at these facilities?
I don't have exact numbers in front of me, but the majority of the revenue that we bring in is put directly back into serving the community. So when it comes to our funding, we get it from a myriad of streams, and it's a combination of grants, generous donors and supporters from the community, like folks who are listening in. We thank you for your support and for keeping us in your thoughts all of these years. And it comes from revenue from the pharmacy. Those are kind of our main funding streams, but it really is grants, donors, and revenue from keeping people healthy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we could actually do an hour-and-a-half show. we really could. We really could, because there's a lot that we want to be of a resource to you. And I mean, he said. And having Jewel here tonight is adding to that. But please understand, there's a lot of information that that we could talk to you about. So I'm going to, before we let Jewel go, I do want to say, please do your research. Go to Whitman-Walker.org or go to Whitman-Walker-impact.org, and read up on what's out there for you, because HIV and AIDS is still here. And it's not here like it was yesterday. And it's not even like it, when I think of today, there's so many advancements going on every single minute. I mean, there's so many changes that are helping people to live longer and just not go through what happened 40 years ago. So do your homework, and also go to the World Health Organization. Also, please, there's a bunch of information out there that you can go to, even the CDC. So I'm going to say, Jewel, thank you for being here tonight to talk to us and get us through, our segment of the show, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, as we talk about the impact of HIV and AIDS for this 40th anniversary of World AIDS Day. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Wow, and I see some of the what do you call it? Our viewers. I'm sorry, not what do you call it, you guys. I'm sorry. When you live, there's a lot going on. But I thank you to our viewers, who have asked questions, and I see Jessup. Hey, Jessup, she's back. She said very informative, as this show always is. That's to you, Jessup. Thank you. AK, thank you for joining us tonight. And Alma, thank you for being here. Oh, I'm sorry, Alma. Alma and I go back a long way. Alma also has a show on NNPA, and we also have shared story. We have a friend of ours who we used to work with at USA Today who died of AIDS, and he was very close to us. And so Alma, you're in my journal. So we have a very special relationship there. But thank you for joining us, Jewel. And we will see you after the second segment of our show. Thank you. So, Vosh and Nigel, thank you all. I got a little emotional during the show, so thank you all for helping me get through that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you were amazing in telling your story and sharing. It's a lot, and I appreciate your honesty and just being so present with us today.
I appreciate you too. And hey, Monica. Well, tonight, as you see, you all, we have a very, very, very special guest, our new correspondent, Mr. Nigel Ashford. And we decided to play rapid fire with Nigel tonight, you all, so you all can get to know a little bit more about Nigel. And Vosh and I we picked our own questions, our own rapid fire. So Vosh, was I selected to go first?
I believe you are going to go first. Yes.
I'm going to go first?
Yes.
Okay. Put Nigel full screen, please. If you will. Okay. So Nigel, Nigel, what motivates you the most?
I think what motivates me the most is dying and not being able to achieve what I was put on this earth to do. I think so many people go through this world and as zombies, and they're just not living life and fulfilling their purpose. And I feel like God has just blessed me in letting me know what he wants me to do and have understanding of who he wants me to become. And I think I just don't want to leave this earth with no regret. I remember a friend of mine talked about a story of two twins who were getting ready to pass away at the same time. And one twin saw 9 versions of himself and another twin saw nothing. And the twin that saw the 9 versions said, "We are the people that you could have become, but you didn't take those first steps." And I don't want to see those people. So yeah, that's what drives me.
Okay, so what do you wish you learned sooner in life?
Ooh, I think
it's rapid fire. You better come up with it quick. Okay, you better.
I will say financial stability. I think when we go to college and then we have these refund checks and all this kind of stuff, and I just want to spend. I'm not under my mom's roof anymore, and I can just buy anything. I think I would have saved that money, invested that money, not took out a couple of credit cards. I think financial stability.
Okay. And what is the kindest thing someone's ever did for you?
Ooh, I think I would have to say the kindest thing somebody's ever did for me is save my life. My best friend, she saved my life.
Oh, okay, best friend. We need best friends like that. And what's your biggest flaw?
I think my biggest flaw is
You're just perfect.
No.
No, I'm just messing with you.
I think my biggest flaw is I'm very quiet at first, and I observe, and people, especially in the gay community, they come up and hug you, and they come up and shake your hand and act like we're family, and I'm kind of like, oh.
Okay. So your biggest flaw is that you're standoffish.
Yeah, a little bit. And it's a self-defense thing. Like, I don't know you. Okay. And especially when COVID was going on and they were still coming and hugging you, like, whoa, you got your mask, you got we can do a bump. But yeah, no.
Well, my last question is, or rapid fire for you is, what do you think people misunderstand about you and why?
I think people misunderstand that they think I'm this very confident, very controlled person, but actually I overthink everything. I've gone through depression, I've gone through anxiety, I overthink. But when I get up in the public or when I get up in front of the camera, I'm very, inspirational going through this. But I have my tears behind closed doors. I have my breakdowns behind closed doors.
Okay. All right.
Well, David is team introvert with you. So mine are quick. Mine are easy for you to just go really quickly. So okay. What do you typically eat for breakfast?
Turkey sausage. Oh, do you want me to go more? Okay.
That's good. Turkey sausage. I'm good with that. What's your favorite movie genre?
Ooh, I love action. Love action. And Marvel. Yeah.
All right, superhero. Go ahead, superhero. What's your highest bowling score?
187.
I guessed 186. I feel so good about myself. When were you the most proud of yourself?
Oh, I think when I made my show last year. I've always wanted to do talk show hosting, and I got out of the TV reporting because I was told I didn't have the look. I was plus size back then. And then when COVID hit, my therapist told me, I think this is the time you should do it. And then I did my show, and I was so proud because it took 2 years to get back into it. And it was like finding that lost love.
Right on. Last one. What is your go-to Christmas carol?
Anything with Mariah Carey. That's her season when she comes back with that Christmas album.
I know Mariah is mean to us all year long, but come around like August, September, she starts warming up because Christmas time's coming. She's gonna sell them albums. All right, that was it. Those are my rapid fire questions. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I hope our audience got a little bit more info. You know a little bit more about Nigel right now, and we look forward to learning more about Nigel as he will be returning. Thank you for being here. Well, we are nearing the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen, and next week on December the 3rd, for those of you who don't know, what is it? This whole dating, since COVID, dating has taken on a whole new way of life. And we're going to have a professional matchmaker here next week. His name is Lamont Scales, and he is with he's a dating coach at betterwaytomeet.com. He's going to be here and answer some of your questions about what he does. And believe me, he is all I can say, he is special. He is special in a good way, ladies and gentlemen. So you do not want to miss our show next week, Professional Matchmaker. And before we go, I have two things. I want to give you our words of the week. If you think education is expensive, try ignorance. All right. And that was by Derek Bach. And in honor of this show tonight, I wanted to dedicate this show to somebody. And for those of you who are familiar with the show Quiet Storm on the radio station, this person that I'm about to dedicate our show to tonight, Mr. Melvin Lindsay, he created the Quiet Storm on the radios at WHUR, and he is being celebrated this week. Melvin died of AIDS in 1992 on March 26th. He was a very, 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 very good friend of mine. My partner was a fashion designer, and he would tailor make Melvin's clothes. And so Melvin would come over. He was so sophisticated. I mean, just an amazing guy. And to see him go through what he did and how AIDS ravaged his body, it was just something that I think about all the time. And I have a lot of people who have succumbed. But Melvin, I want to dedicate this show to you. And he used to play Follow Your Road by Seawind for me. And if I could play that tonight, I would end the show on that. But I'm going to say, Melvin, thank you. And we honor you tonight on this World AIDS Day week. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching us tonight. Thank you for being here. And until we see you again, and here is Jewel. Jewel is back. Thank you again, Jewel, for joining us tonight. Amazing show. Appreciate you. I'm going to be in touch with you for the rest of my life. Okay, just know that. Just know that.
Thanks for having me. I really had a great time, and it's been really wonderful to spend World AIDS Day in this way, or in preparation for World AIDS Day.
Thank you. Thank you. And Nigel, thank you for being here, man. You are solid as a rock. I know you are. And I really appreciate your debut show tonight. Vosh, you know I love you. And thank you for being here every week. So until we see you all next week, ladies and gentlemen, on December 3rd, please don't hesitate to come back for another episode of He Said.
He said.
He said.
There you go. All right. We will see you guys next week. Have a good night. Thank you for joining us, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Bye.